Shadow America Episode 1. The Eyes, Part 1. The Nightmare Begins. The Houston air that night wasn't just hot. It was a physical presence, thick and wet, clinging to Melinda Aguilar's skin like a second, unwanted layer as she trudged up the creaking wooden stairs to her second-floor apartment. The smell of fried onions from the neighbor below mingled unpleasantly with the distant tang of refinery smoke and the sweet decay of overflowing dumpsters in the alley. Her shift at the diner had bled into the early hours. The clatter of dishes, the greasy smell of the grill, the leering comments from truckers that left a greasier residue, all still clung to her. She fumbled with her keys, the cheap metal slick with sweat in her palm. The single bulb above her door flickered erratically, casting jumpy shadows that made the peeling paint on the doorframe look like grasping fingers. Just get inside. Shower. Sleep. The thought was a desperate mantra. The apartment welcomed her with stale, trapped heat. She kicked off her worn sneakers, the cool linoleum a minor relief against her aching feet. A single lamp cast a weak yellow pool of light in the small living area, illuminating the threadbare sofa, the small TV squatting silently in the corner, and the framed photo of her younger sister Luz, smiling innocently from a sunnier day. Melinda dropped her bag with a thud, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet. She moved to the window, the one overlooking the narrow alley and the sagging chain-link fence beyond, hoping for a non-existent breeze. The streetlight below cast long, distorted shadows. Nothing moved, just the incessant chirp of crickets and the low thrum of the city, a constant, distant heartbeat. She filled a glass with tepid tap water, the pipes groaning in protest. Leaning against the chipped formica countertop in her tiny kitchenette, she closed her eyes. The image of Carl, the quiet, almost shy handyman who'd fixed Mrs. Garza's leaky faucet down the hall last week, flickered in her mind. He'd nodded politely, barely meeting her eyes. Harmless, wasn't he? A shiver, unrelated to the heat, traced her spine. Just tired, so tired. She drained the glass. The shower was a brief, lukewarm respite. Wrapped in a thin cotton robe, she padded back into the living room, damp hair plastered to her neck. She clicked off the lamp, plunging the room into near darkness, save for the faint glow from the alley light filtering through the thin curtains. The weight of exhaustion pressed down, a physical force pulling her towards the sagging mattress in the adjoining bedroom. She didn't hear the subtle scrape against the window latch in the living room. Not over the thudding of her own pulse in her ears, the rhythmic creak of the ancient ceiling fan overhead, and the sudden, startled yowl of a cat fighting somewhere in the alley below. Sleep, just sleep. She pushed open her bedroom door. The air here was even thicker, stagnant. She didn't turn on the light. Moonlight, weak and diluted by the city haze, barely illuminated the outlines of her dresser, the small closet, the bed. She dropped the robe, letting it pool at her feet, and slid between the slightly damp sheets in just her underwear. The pillowcase smelled faintly of her own sweat and cheap detergent. She turned onto her side, facing the wall, pulling the thin sheet up to her shoulders. The fan's drone faded into a background hum. Her muscles began to unclench, the sharp edges of the day blurring. Part 2. The intrusion. A sound, not the cat, not the fan. A pressure change, a faint displacement of air. Melinda's eyes snapped open in the darkness. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Her body was instantly rigid, every nerve ending screaming. The door? She strained her ears. Nothing from the living room door. Her gaze, wide and unblinking, scanned the moon-silvered sliver of the room visible from her position. Dresser, closet door slightly ajar. The empty space beside the bed, paranoia. You're alone. The thought was brittle, unconvincing. Then a shadow detached itself from the deeper blackness near the closet. It wasn't a shape, not at first. just a denser patch of darkness that moved, silently, fluidly. It flowed across the small patch of moonlight on the floor, absorbing the weak light rather than reflecting it. Melinda's breath hitched in her throat, a tiny, strangled sound. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Not real. Sleep paralysis. Just a dream. But the cool dread soaking through her veins was terrifyingly real. The shadow coalesced at the foot of her bed, taller than she remembered Carl being, utterly still. She could feel its gaze, a physical weight pinning her to the mattress, colder than the sheets. Don't move. Don't breathe. Maybe it will go away. Her mind raced, fragmented, useless. Call for help? Who? Mrs. Garza was deaf. The neighbors downstairs fought constantly, loud music drowning everything. Her small bedside phone felt miles away. A floorboard creaked. Not loudly, but in the absolute stillness of the room, it was like a gunshot. It came from beside the bed. He was there, right beside her. She hadn't seen him move. Her body reacted before her mind could. She jerked violently onto her back, a scream ripping from her throat, raw, primal terror. The sound died instantly, choked off by a large, calloused hand clamped over her mouth and nose. The smell hit her first. Stale cigarette smoke, motor oil, and something else. Coppery, metallic, blood? Panic exploded behind her eyes, white-hot and blinding. She thrashed, bucking wildly, legs tangling in the sheet. Her nails scrabbled against the rough fabric of a workshirt, finding flesh, scratching desperately. She connected with something. An ear? A cheek? Felt skin tear beneath her fingernails. A grunt, not pain. Annoyance, like swatting a fly. His other hand, impossibly strong, grabbed her flailing wrist, then the other, yanking them above her head with brutal force. His knee came down hard on her stomach, driving the air from her lungs in a painful whoosh. Stars danced in her vision. The hand over her mouth pressed harder, grinding her lips against her teeth. She tasted blood, her own. His face loomed inches above hers in the gloom. Not Carl, the handyman. This face was a mask of terrifying calm. Eyes wide, unblinking, reflecting the sliver of moonlight like polished stones. Dark, empty, not angry, not excited, curious, like a child examining an insect. He held her gaze. She stared back, drowning in that terrifying void. The scream trapped in her chest turned to ice. He breathed. The sound was soft, almost gentle, utterly incongruous with the violence pinning her down. It was worse than a shout. It promised inevitability. Pretty eyes. His voice was low, raspy, devoid of inflection. Evil eyes. No, no, no. The denial was silent, screaming inside her skull. She twisted her head, trying to bite the hand covering her mouth, her teeth scraping against salty skin. He pressed down harder on her throat. Black spots bloomed at the edges of her vision. Her lungs burned. She was drowning on dry land. He brought his hand up. Not rope. Something thinner, synthetic. A coil of narrow, white cord, the kind used for Venetian blinds. He looped it quickly, expertly, around her wrists, still pinned above her head. The material bit sharply into her skin. He pulled. Tight. Tighter. She felt the bones grind, the circulation cut off. A whimper escaped around the pressure on her mouth. He secured the knot with a sharp, efficient tug. Satisfied, he released her wrists. They fell uselessly to the pillow, bound tight behind her head. He shifted his weight, kneeling fully on the bed now, straddling her hips. The hand remained clamped over her face, the pressure on her throat lessening just enough for her to drag in a thin, desperate sip of air that tasted of fear and his skin. He looked down at her, his head tilted slightly. Those empty eyes scanned her face, her bound arms, her exposed torso. There was no lust in that gaze, no rage, only a cold, clinical assessment, like a butcher sizing up a side of meat. Melinda lay frozen, tears streaming hot and silent down her temples into her hair. The initial storm of panic had passed, leaving a terrifying numbness, a chilling clarity. He's going to kill me. The thought was crystalline, undeniable. Not rape, not robbery. Kill. It was in those dead, observing eyes. In the calm efficiency of the binding. In the utter absence of anything recognizably human in his expression. He leaned down slowly, his face so close she could see the pores on his nose, a faint stubble on his chin. His breath was warm against her cheek, smelling of stale coffee and something vaguely chemical. He didn't speak, just looked. His gaze locked onto hers again, intense, probing, searching for something. The evil? Her mind shrieked the absurdity, even as terror choked her. She squeezed her eyes shut, unable to bear the vacancy in his stare any longer. A tear escaped, tracing a cold path to her ear. Melinda's eyes flew open. He was getting off the bed, turning away, walking calmly towards the bedroom door. Leaving? Was it over? Had he changed his mind? A sliver of impossible, treacherous hope pierced the icy dread. She lay perfectly still, barely breathing, listening to his soft footsteps recede into the living room. The faint click of the front door latch. Oh God, yes, go, please go. Silence. Thick, heavy, suffocating silence. She strained her ears. Nothing. Just the frantic thudding of her own heart, the rasp of her own shallow breathing. Was he gone? Had he really just left? The bound wrists, the raw terror, the memory of those eyes. They screamed no, but the silence, it stretched. 5 seconds. 10. Slowly, agonizingly, she turned her head towards the bedroom door. It stood half open, revealing a slice of the dark living room beyond. Empty. The flickering alley light still cast its weak glow through the curtains. Move, now. The command came from some deep, primal survival instinct, cutting through the shock. If he's gone, run. If he's not, run anyway. She tried to sit up. The bound wrists behind her head yanked her back, the cord biting deep. Pain shot through her shoulders. She gasped. Think. She rolled onto her side, facing the edge of the bed. She could see the floor. The robe she'd discarded. The open window in the living room was her only chance. The second-story window. Wriggling like an insect, she pushed with her legs, inching her body toward the edge of the bed. Every movement was agony. Every rustle of the sheets sounded like thunder in her ears. Her bare skin scraped against the coarse sheet. She reached the edge, dangling her legs over. Her feet found the cool linoleum. She pushed off, landing in a crouch, her balance precarious with her hands bound behind her. She stayed low, listening. Still nothing from the living room.